One of the big things, as you know, the First World War, a lot of the transport was with horses. It was all horses or mules, and Dad was in charge of a battalion of mules. His job was to take ammunition from the dump up to the big guns. He was allocated a little mare, and he had her for 4 years. And then he had to leave her in Egypt, and it broke his heart. It really broke his heart, because he'd been with her, and she'd, on one occasion, he was going up to the guns with the ammunition, and she stopped dead. She wouldn't go any further, so he dismounted, gave the reins to the native, and he walked up, and he found that the whole gun crew were massacred. There'd been in those days, the shells they were using weren't all that efficient. And one of the shells, as it left the muzzle of the gun, it exploded and it killed all the gun crew. And I mean, you can imagine what it was like, an explosion that close. They weren't recognisable. But she knew. She obviously smelt it or sensed it, but she stopped and wouldn't go. Yeah, he always told me about that. He didn't talk about it much at all, did he?
No.
Certainly not to me.
No.
My father talked very little about the war.
No.
He was almost ashamed of it.
Yeah. Well, he was really disillusioned. My brother and I were not allowed to join the cadets. He was against. He just turned against it somehow. Although, as soon as the national anthem played, he would be up there standing to attention. So
On the other side, when he was in service in Egypt, he did have 3 days leave.
Oh yes,
He was granted 3 days leave, and he went to Jerusalem. There's a handwritten account of everything he saw and did on those 3 days leave, and it was like the opposite side of the story. You know, he was, how can you put it, explaining about Jerusalem and all the different architecture and stuff like that, and but it's in the middle of a war. He got 3 days leave to go from wherever they were.
El Kantara.
To go to Jerusalem and have 3 days off.
Totally different.
It's a handwritten account of what they did on those 3 days, which makes really interesting reading.
Beautifully written, you know, put it in.
What were you saying about his daymares that were post?
It would be.
Well, he would get he would be having a nightmare if he remembering what was happening, and what he'd experienced, and it would be.
It was in a state, wasn't it? Terrible. Mum would say, it's all right, he'll come out of it, but we were both young lads, weren't we?
I can't actually remember that. I can remember him suffering because of what was happening, what had happened to him.
Do you think it had an impact on your mother when he came home with that level of PST?
She died actually, didn't his first wife died, you see, and she's buried at Tolgrove Church, and then we're an issue from his second marriage. We met Mum at the Red Rock and Starkings. She was a waitress in the cafe, and we met her, and the rest is history.
When the next war happened, how old were you then?
I was born in 39, so May, the war hadn't started, but by September it had all gone pear-shaped, hadn't it? September.
He wasn't actually in the Second World War.
No.
He was in the Royal Observer Corps.
He did, yeah. Yeah, he did his bit.
During the Second World War.
Hence the pictures of aeroplanes.
So do you think the Second World War had a big impact on you? Were you evacuated?
No, we lived in
You had
village.
evacuees. Yeah.
We had evacuees come and
to
stop
us.
with
Yeah,
us
we had they came to us
from
in the
Liverpool.
village.
Yeah. And my mother was evacuated up to Derbyshire
Oh,
to a coal mine,
oh my goodness.
which got bombed.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Did
Oh,
you
we
say you
were-
lived in Liverpool and then the children were evacuated to you in Liverpool?
They
Yeah, Auntie
well, we
Vera.
called them auntie and uncle, but
Auntie
Because
Vera.
I would have thought that was the prime time to be bombed.
Yeah.
well,
Because of the-
they came from Liverpool down to Bedfordshire.
Oh, to you, right,
Yeah,
I see.
they came
I've
and
got it
stopped
the wrong
with
way
us.
round. Yeah.
Uncle Jack was in the war, wasn't he? Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because I wasn't born until 1945, so it was all
right,
over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
By
Yeah.
the time I came on the scene.
yeah.
I was born just as rationing ended, sweet rationing ended,
Oh,
Remember
right.
1952. So, yeah.
There's a picture of me somewhere on VE Day with me Union Jack standing in Jimmy Cleaver's garden.
Yeah.
Oh, how old
Yeah.
would you have been then?
Oh,
6.
probably about 6 or 7.
Oh.
Not much older. Not much older.
Do you remember it?
Oh God, yeah.
You do, yeah.
I remember we walked down the village and everybody in their bedroom windows, they jammed a Union Jack in
Yeah.
and shut the window, so the flags were all out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And we were a much wanted generation, weren't we?
yeah.
After the war, we were a golden generation
Well,
in some ways.
absolutely,
Yeah.
I can remember me tickets, me coupons
Yeah.
for me sweets,
Yeah.
and those sort of things, yeah.
Yeah.
But Dad used to take me up to the Royal Observatory, and he was on duty when Coventry got bombed. He could see it. It was a big glow in the sky,
Yeah.
and that was it in Bedfordshire. Coventry's way up, isn't it?
Yeah, Coventry would be 55 miles away.
But we were a target because Vauxhall Motors in Luton were producing tanks in those days, and of course the Germans got to know they were a target, so we used to get quite a few planes coming over. Mum, my dear mother and I were put under the stairs because we were told that was the safest place if a bomb hit the house. Where was Dad? He was out in the garden. He was out there looking up the sky. Yeah.
I mean, you hear stories now about Bletchley Park,
Mm.
but we lived within
Ooh, yeah.
less than 10 miles away from that.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
as a child going through early childhood,
Yeah.
primary school and then secondary modern,
Mm.
we didn't know anything about Bletchley Park
No.
because it was so top
Hush, hush,
secret.
Secret.
Yeah.
Alan Turing,
Yeah.
the guy that
Broke the code.
wrote the Enigma code.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was 10 miles away, we knew nothing about it.
It was amazing. The wind.
Used to work for a listening post. She was
Auntie Irene, yeah.
doing this to do with Bletchley Park.
She's still going strong at 96.
Yeah, she's
Is
still
she?
going.
Wow.
She used
She
to
was here a
just-
few weeks ago.
When her shift finished at night, she would wear a man's cap and put a cigarette on and have to cycle how far? 5 miles to Tingbridge. So anybody would think she was a bloke.
Yeah.
Cycling along with a cap and a cigarette on.
Those
That's what
women
she
have
told
only
us.
started to talk about that in recent years, haven't they? They kept it secret.
Yes, yeah.
All
yeah,
those
that's right,
years.
that's right.
It's amazing when you think about it,
is,
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
Mm.
It's
Well, I don't really remember any father talking to me about his experiences during the war, because I would have only been 8 years old at the end of the war.
yeah.
And I mean, you got to know more about it
Mm. Yeah.
than
yeah.
what I ever did.
Oh yes, yes, he did let things slip, but not very much. Not
No.
very much. I was lucky because Dad, after the war, he got a job as a representative for cattle feed, so we went round the farms.
Mm.
I was allowed to go with him to open the gates because he'd got an artificial leg. He didn't lose that in the war, by the way. He lost that on a motorbike accident after the war. So my job, open the gate, shut the gate, sit in the car while he's doing business with the farmers. A lot of the farmers' wives would come out and see me, come on in, and I would be taken into the farmhouse, and I was privileged to listen to the conversations, and I would pick up little bits and pieces that they were talking about, you know.
Yeah.
Dad would share his experiences with the farmer, and
You certainly didn't with us.
no, he didn't. Well, I think Mother was privileged to some of the information, but not much. But I know the big thing was he had to leave his little horse behind, and that really...
Mm. The poppy. I'm not a badge of honour. I'm not a racist smear. I'm not a fashion statement to be worn but once a year. I'm not a glorification of conflict or of war. I'm not a paper ornament, a token. I am more. I am a loving memory of a father or a son, a permanent reminder of each and every one. I'm paper or enamel. I'm old or shining new. I'm a way of saying thank you to every one of you. I am a simple poppy, a reminder to you all that courage, faith and honour will stand where heroes fall.
Second World War, and when the war started, she went back to the hospital, Goodmayes Hospital, to be a sister. She was a night sister there. Well, my grandfather, who had been in the army in the First World War, he was a male nurse at the same hospital. He did the day shift and she did the night shift.
All right.
So she came from Ireland in 1911 and studied in Leeds, and then when she got married and had her children, she gave up nursing and went back to it during the Second World War. One evening when she was going to work at the hospital, she was walking just around the corner from where she lived, and a bomb fell on the corner of the road where she was just a few, well, I suppose she must have been quite a distance away, but she just missed it, and it hit an ARP station on the corner of the road. So she ran up there then to see if she could do anything for the people that were inside, but sadly she couldn't. And the hospital was famous on radio broadcasts in the Second World War, made famous by Lord Haw-Haw, who used to guide the German bombers to an airfield run by Polish airmen. He guided them by telling them to look for the white wall of the hospital, because that led on to fields which eventually led on to the airfields.
All right. And the men that were being nursed there, you were telling me some of them were World War I veterans who were still being nursed for...
They were mainly World War I veterans at that hospital at that time.
Yeah. Horrible. Tell me what it was like being an army wife.
I was with my husband for 21 years in the army life, and I loved every minute of that 21 years. Social life is amazing, was amazing, and we all moved together. We all moved as a regiment or a battalion. My husband was in a Scottish regiment, so it was classed as a battalion. I loved it. I wouldn't have swapped that 21 years at all. Although when he was away, it was hard. It was hard work having 2 children to look after. And then when he come back, it was harder because the children didn't like him, the discipline that he would probably dish out because they weren't used to him being there.
And what about the worry for where he was serving?
He did Ireland, Northern Ireland 3 times while we were married. He went to Bosnia. He always told me not to believe what was on the news or in the newspapers, and if there was something drastic, he would tell me, and only that I was to believe then what he told me. But it was hard. It was hard. You never get used of a car pulling up outside because you don't know who it's going to be. It could be, your neighbour, but you just don't know who's going to knock on your door and say that he's had an accident or something like that. It was quite nerve-wracking, but again it was life, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the 21 years that I was with him. We were in the army.
Did you have many friends who lost husbands or wives?
I've had a couple of friends. My husband had a friend. He was working in London in the recruiting office, and it was when Northern Ireland were dropping putting bombs and car bombs and stuff like that. And he went to work one morning, and there was a car bomb outside the office, and he was killed instantly. And then we've had a couple injured. We had a couple injured when they were in Ireland. We lost a couple. I lost some in Iraq when they did Iraq, but we weren't with them then. It's when you lose somebody in the battalion, it's like losing family, because you all move together. You know everybody, so it's like you're losing family when anybody does get injured or killed due to the army life.
And do you think it had an influence on your children?
I didn't. I kept them blind until they were old enough to understand what was going on. When their dad went away, they never knew where he was going until they were old enough to understand. As far as they were concerned, he was just going on exercise. Although he'd be away for 6 months at a time. I just kept them blind, and when they were old enough, they knew what was going on. They managed. They managed to cope with it. It was just life. That's how it was. It was part of their life. So they just managed to cope up with it.
For the Fallen by Lawrence Binyon. With proud thanksgiving, a mother for her children, England mourns for her dead across the sea. Flesh of her flesh they were, spirit of her spirit, fallen in the cause of the free. Solemnly the drums thrill, death august and royal sings sorrow up into immortal spheres. There is music in the midst of desolation, and a glory that shines upon our tears. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. They mingle not with their laughing comrades again. They sit no more at familiar tables of home. They have no lot in our labour of the daytime. They sleep beyond England's foam. But where our desires are and our hopes profound, felt as well springs that is hidden from sight, to the innermost heart of their own land they are known, as the stars are known to the night. As the stars that shall be bright when we are dust, moving in marches across the heavenly plain, as the stars that are starry in the time of our darkness, to the end they remain.
Please will you tell me a little bit about your service?
So my service, I joined the Royal Artillery in 1988 at 16. I completed 12 months basic training, then went to my unit in Germany, 40 Regiment Royal Artillery. When I got there, I did 89. I did 6 months basically settling in, getting used to the unit. With that, the first Gulf War started. I was away on a course at the time, and I remember all the paras and all the commandos on my course getting taken away because the Gulf had started. I completed my course, got back to camp. They stood the paras and Marines down, and they wanted 7 Armoured Brigade Desert Rats to go out there, which I was part of, and we got stood up and went out to the first Gulf. I served as an ammunition driver to one of the guns out there. Did a total of about 8 months through the war. After that, came back. From there, 92, we were put on standby to go into Bosnia as the UN to help a fighting withdrawal for NATO forces. We stood on standby for about 2 years. We got stood down. In between that time, I changed from a driver to a radar operator. 1994, the marketplace in Sarajevo City got mortared, and the head of the UN, General Mike Rose, wanted some sort of equipment out there that could identify hostile mortars. So the radar troops were deployed to Sarajevo and Bosnia. I went out in September 94 to mid 95 and completed a tour in the city. The end of that tour, came back 6 months in camp. A ceasefire was declared in Bosnia, and I was sent back out as part of the implementation force, NATO implementation force, to make sure the ceasefire held. From there I went to the School of Royal Artillery, where I became an instructor. I instructed there for about 5 years. Unfortunately, I had an injury, and I transferred trades instead of leaving the forces. I transferred trades to the Adjutant General's Corps. I transferred, and then my first posting after that was the Royal Signals. Went from the Royal Signals to a new unit. I helped establish a new unit for the new radio equipment that the army had. I went from there. I went back to the Signals to a 21 Signals Regiment in Cologne. From there to 1 Battalion Remy in Germany. From 1 Battalion Remy in Germany to, I think now, 1 Medical Regiment in Germany. I deployed to Iraq with them in 2008 at the field hospital in just outside Basra. I did a 6-month tour with them, came back, finished my 3-year post with them. I was posted to the 1st Battalion Yorkshire Regiment, where I deployed to Afghanistan, to the headquarters at Lashkar, and did a 6-month tour with them. When I came back, I was posted to headquarters Army Air Corps in Middle Wallop as Chief Clerk, and then moved to Army headquarters in Andover, where I was working on the restructure of the British Army, and that's when I left in 2015.
So would you think you call yourself a career soldier?
26 years, I think so, yes. Yes.
And was that easier being single than it was when you got married?
I was married, but I wasn't married for operational tours. I was my tours came in between my marriages. So no, I was married in '97, and divorced in 2010, and then I met my new partner as I left the forces about 6 months prior to leaving the forces. I had a girlfriend on my Afghan tour, and she took it quite well. My mother was the worry for me. Certainly the first Gulf War I was 18, and I remember speaking to my mum the day the air war started, and managed to get onto a phone, talking to my mum, and we had a Scud alarm, a Scud missile attack, which was nowhere near us, but the alarms went off. I had to drop the phone and run. And I remember having to go back to the phone about 8 hours later to phone my dad to make sure my mum was alright. And then the 4-day ground war, my mother didn't leave the TV for 4 days, sat in a dressing gown in front of the TV for 4 days. Little did she know that no casualties would be released in the press until the next of kin had been informed. But she learned quickly, and as my 5 tours I did and progressed, she was very good. But yeah, I think at such a young age, 18, she was certainly beside herself for the 6 months, 7 months I was out there.
So when you came out, was it sort of like losing a family? Because I found, talking to other people, that the army is so, not protective, what's the word I'm looking for, supportive, that when you actually come out it can be very difficult.
It's extremely difficult when you leave, you know, especially after 26 years. You do leave a family for 4 days, sat in a dressing gown in front of the TV for 4 days. Little did she know that no casualties would be released in the press until the next of kin had been informed. But she learned quickly, and as my 5 tours I did and progressed, she was very good. But yeah, I think at such a young age, 18, she was certainly beside herself for the 6 months, 7 months I was out there.
So when you came out, was it sort of like losing a family? Because I found, talking to other people, that the army is so, not protective, what's the word I'm looking for, supportive, that when you actually come out it can be very difficult.
It's extremely difficult when you leave, you know, especially after 26 years. You do leave a family, your friends, your colleagues, a good job. You walk away from it, and you're almost starting your life again, and it's totally different out here in the civilian industry, having to work to how civilians work and not the forces, it's a massive change in mindset. But you know, I do miss it. I've been out 7 years now. 7-8 years. I find it hard, very hard every day. But every day you still fall back on everything you learned in the forces.
And now you're going back to work with them again?
Yes, I am, yeah. Yes, but on the other side, so I can sit and watch them train and do all the hard work, and I don't have to do it anymore.
Not get shot at?
No, not get shot at. So I'm looking forward to it, actually. Yeah.
you tell me a bit about your service, please?
I'm Ralph Hamlet. I was in the Royal Air Force. I joined up at the end of 1982, about 6 months after the Falklands finished, because prior to the Falklands, they'd closed all recruitment in all three services, and after the Falklands, they opened all up again. I'd been waiting 18 months to get in, so I managed to get in. I joined the Royal Air Force as a mechanical transport driver, which is basically a driver. Did my training, basic training, then did my trade training down in Wales, and then was posted to the beautiful area of Norfolk to RAF Marham. The RAF are a bit different to the Army. We get posted to a camp, not a regiment, and we stay there and then just move about. The first 3.5 years there, meet my family here, and then I got posted over to Benson in Oxfordshire, and then I was due to get married, but got sent to the Falklands for a 4-month detachment, so I had to cancel it and wait till I got back from the Falklands. We then were there for a couple of years, and then I went into work one day. The Gulf War had started. That was August, and September, my mate had been sent away, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be next. I know I am. Pre-warned the wife I'd most probably have to go quite quick. Got called into work 5 o'clock, and I was gone by 10 o'clock next morning. I was gone to the Falklands, down to the Gulf, sorry. I ended up in Oman, and worked in Oman for a couple of months. I went up to Riyadh, and I was helping with the refueling of the aircraft that were already out there, and worked with them all the way through September, October, November, December. Had Christmas out there, and the war actually started on the 17th of January, but I was lucky enough to get sent back on the 16th of January. So somebody took my place because I'd been there for 4 months already, and I landed in the country on the 16th, drove to here in Hunstanton, where my wife was staying with her parents, and the war started while I was asleep that night. So I ended up going back to work and ended up driving around this country, picking stuff to take to ports on an unloader for the next 3 months. And then life went back to some sort of normality. The Air Force carried out a no-fly zone in the Saudi Arabian area for the next 10 years between the two wars. And I got sent out there 3 times. Once to Dhahran for 4 months, once to Riyadh for 4 months, and once to Bahrain for 4 months. We also did other exercises in Oman to practice in case anything else happened, so that we knew what we were doing in the desert a lot more as an Air Force. We also accumulated more within the Army and Navy, so that we were more tri-service and we did things a lot better on the transport side of things. So I also did another 4 months in the Falklands, so I was away for that again. And we also had Bosnia going on in between, and the RAF did a no-fly zone for Bosnia, but worked out of southern Italy. So I had to do 4 months in southern Italy at Gioia del Colle, which is a lot nicer than being in the Army, but that's the perks of being in the Air Force. You get to stay in nice places when we're flying. We send our officers to fight. The Army go and fight themselves. So I did my 4 months out there as well. So obviously I'm away from home a lot. And then obviously we had the second Gulf War. I ended up going to that. And this time, because I was a sergeant, I had a lot more responsibility. I ended up being a convoy commander in Kuwait, going up into Iraq. Taking over a prisoner of war compound so they could erect that, the REME out there, and then taking water barrels up into Basra after the war had finished. And then obviously transporting everybody from down in Kuwait, where they waited to start the war, up into Basra and into Iraq. So we moved the hospitals, supply chain and everything else from there to there. So I did that, and I carried on then till the mid-July, when the temperature was just reaching 55 degrees during the day, which was lovely trying to get into a vehicle in that heat. So we had to wear gloves all the time. And then I returned home from there, and this was 2001-2 by then, and I was due to come out of the Air Force 2 years later. So just before that, I'd been doing the fireman's strike, driving the Green Goddesses and teaching people to drive Green Goddesses, the younger lads. So I'd done that. We finished that off when I got back, and then I just finished my last 18 months and left in 2004. Obviously going to Tip Street, doing a bit of driving, but ended up in Hunstanton. Obviously we had our own helm by here by then. I came out of the Air Force because, as I've just explained, I was away a hell of a lot. And I worked out when I came out of the Air Force, my daughter was 13, and I'd been away a total of 7 years of her life. including all the 4-month detachments. And obviously, if we had to drive to Italy, we were away for 2 weeks, courses and everything else. It added up to a long time. So I wanted more family life and more security from a family life, not for monetary wise. And because I've been in the Air Force for 22 years, I got an immediate pension. So that helped, so I didn't have to find a really, really well-paid job. I could just do a normal job, because in Norfolk, obviously, lots of the money isn't fantastic, but I've been okay, and I've been here now for 18 years, and everything's happened. My family grown up, and I'm now get to when I want to quieten up a little bit now, and just not do as much.